Welcome to Nightmare Narratives, where the shadows come alive and every story leaves a chill down your spine. Are you ready to step into the darkness? Let the nightmares begin. When my brother and I were around 12 years old, back in 2006, we were at my dad and stepmom's house in the afternoon, probably around 3 p.m., so still broad daylight. My brother and I were the only two people home because my dad, stepmom, and younger siblings were in a nearby town for their youth soccer game. The two of us were lounging in my dad's room, located at the back of the house, watching a movie when we heard a knock on the front door. My brother and I grew up with our single mom and were latchkey kids, so being home alone and having people stop by wasn't concerning or weird for us, especially back in those days when it was more common for friends to drop by your house to see if you were home, since not every kid had a cell phone to get in touch. But on this day, we were at my dad's house, and I was always less comfortable there and didn't know anyone in the neighborhood. So, the knock at the door felt strange, since none of our friends or relatives lived nearby to come over randomly. Both of us wanted to ignore the knocking and wait for the person to go away. But being latchkey kids in a house where it wasn't normal for people to stop by unexpectedly, my instinct was to go make sure the door was locked. We sure as hell knew better than to go and make our presence known, and we definitely weren't going to open the door. But in my mind, there was no getting around one of us going to make sure nothing was unlocked. I knew my brother well enough to tell he wasn't going to do it, so I volunteered because it was an overwhelming priority. I got up and stealthily crept down the hallway, leading from my dad's room to the front door. There was a window next to the door, so I crouched around and very carefully peeked between the blinds before reaching out and twisting the door lock as silently as I could. The door was unlocked, so I'm so damn glad I went to check. When I peeked out the window, I saw a middle-aged man, slim and tall but not huge, bald on top with short salt and pepper hair wrapping around the sides of his head. He had his hands behind his back. I can't recall if it was one hand or both, but in one of his hands was a metal object that I took for a knife. To this day, I can't say for sure what he was holding. He didn't see me looking at him through the window, or if he did, he at least didn't look at me and let me know he knew I was there. And the way the house was designed, the front door wasn't visible from the street because there were bushes and tall trees blocking it. My 12-year-old heart sank, knowing this random guy was at the door with what I thought was a knife behind his back, or at the very least a metal object he felt was necessary to hide. It was especially terrifying because I realized it wasn't unrealistic. The man wouldn't be visible from the street, so he could hide something behind his back without worrying about neighbors or passing cars seeing him. This house would have been a good target for someone looking to do bad stuff since he'd be shielded from being seen. At that point, my normal paranoia turned into full-on fight-or-flight panic mode. It was like a switch flipped. From let me just go make sure the door is locked to holy shit, I think there's a guy with a knife at the door. I crept back to my dad's room and told my brother what I'd seen. He grabbed the house phone. I can't remember if there was one in my dad's room or if he had to go to another room, but before long, he was speaking with my dad on the phone. My dad immediately instructed us to let his Rhodesian Ridgeback Buddy in from the backyard. Let me tell you, in a situation of pure terror, having a big, loud dog was the only bit of hope or relief. Without Buddy there, I don't even want to imagine sitting in that feeling of terror as a child, knowing we had no other help. From there, my brother and I locked ourselves in the bathroom near the front door. I'm not sure why we decided to hide in the closest room to the guy outside, but from inside the bathroom, we called 911. My brother clutched a kitchen knife, and both of us were ugly crying, struggling to get words out to the operator. While we were in the bathroom, I swear on my life I heard the front door handle being twisted around. That would have meant the guy was now trying to enter the house. The bathroom was like 7 feet from the front door, so I feel like I know what I heard. I don't think I could confuse such a specific sound, so I trust it was what I thought it was. I have such a vivid memory of huddling in that bathroom, feeling truly helpless and out of control of what might happen next. The only comfort was the noise of Buddy barking at the front door. I kept thinking that if the guy decided to kick the door down, he'd have to deal with a big dog and then face a knife fight with two kids. Needless to say, I was really hoping Buddy would hold it down for us because I didn't like our odds if the man at the door got past Buddy. Before long, the cops arrived, and shortly after, my dad and stepmom got home too. Apparently, they had jumped in her maroon minivan and drove like 100 miles per hour to make the 15-mile drive back home after we called. By the time everyone got there, the guy was gone, and nothing ever came of it. To this day, my dad's theory is that the guy at the door was his neighbor coming over to complain because, apparently, Buddy would always bark at the neighbor while he was doing yard work. My dad thinks the neighbor was trimming bushes and happened to have clippers in his hands when he came over to complain. It sounds reasonable enough, but I wish I had asked at the time to see the neighbor so I could know for sure. Personally, I'm open to my dad's theory, but it always seemed to me that he clung to it more for his own comfort, since the alternative would be a parent's nightmare. If it were the neighbor, though, some things don't make sense, like the guy conveniently showing up when no cars were in my dad's driveway, since they had just left to go to the soccer game about 20 minutes earlier. Coming over when it appeared nobody was home seems like a weird time to expect your neighbor to answer the door. Or the guy twisting the handle, like I'm pretty damn sure I heard. That's not a very neighborly act, trying to enter someone's home when they're gone. Either way, whether the threat was real or imagined by my brother and me, our experience was as real as it gets. What I learned is that sometimes perception really is reality, at least in your own mind. The feeling of thinking we were living a nightmare was authentic and visceral because we believed we were living a nightmare. What the explanation was, I can't say for sure, and it bothers me so much that I'll never know with certainty if we were that close to God knows what. No clue why my dad never followed up with the neighbor, but looking back, it seems pretty clear the adults wrote it off as a product of kids' imagination. This is one I have debated ever speaking about openly, mostly because of how strange the whole thing was. It happened 7 years ago back in my hometown in California. I was 17 at the time and living with my mom and older sister in a tiny condo. We were a pretty devoutly Catholic family at the time and would attend Holy Adoration on Friday nights at our parish. Before we went, we ordered some pizza and chicken wings, but the delivery was pretty late, so we left without really touching our food and put it all away to eat after. When we got home, we discovered our back door had been left ajar. We began arguing over who left the door open. We stepped inside and found a pretty strange scene. The pizza and chicken boxes were all sitting on the kitchen floor, stacked neatly on top of each other. We assumed our very food-motivated dog had something to do with it, still not fully aware of the situation. When picking up the boxes, we noticed bites had been taken from everything. I went into the living room and found a pile of pistachio shells sitting in the middle of the room. That was about when we got scared because no dog would be able to shell pistachios and pile them up in that way. My mom called a family friend over to help sort out what was going on. When he arrived, he seemed terrified and went home to grab his gun. He planned on staying the night in case anything more happened. In the time he went to get the gun, I had gone upstairs to go to bed. I was tired, scared, and hungry because my food, which I had anxiously been waiting to eat, had seemingly been devoured by someone or something. My bed was pretty elevated off the ground and neatly made. My mom was with me as I was peeling the covers back to climb in and go to sleep. However, when I lifted up one of the decorative sham pillows, I found a chicken wing with one bite taken out of it on my pillow. My mom and I went silent and just stared at each other in disbelief, not sure what kind of sick joke this person thought they were pulling. Fast forward to me moving away to college a year later. I was in Kansas at a tiny liberal arts school, hanging out with some friends in the dorms. My phone started ringing. I didn't answer. It rang again, so I looked at the screen to see it had no caller ID. I picked up, A male voice that sounded familiar enough casually addressed me by my name and asked how I was doing. I asked who it was, but got no response, just heavy breathing. I asked again who it was and started to hear a bit of giggling and what sounded like, well, a man getting himself off. He finally answered, in a much more serious tone, that he knew me and would only ever reveal his identity if I helped him. I panicked and hung up. Seconds later, he called again, taunting me. It was strange. I knew the voice, but I couldn't place it. I ran out of my friend's dorm to the bathroom he had excused himself to before the initial call came through and told him something weird was happening. The calls kept coming, and I rejected them every time. Finally, my friend took the phone from my hand and told the guy to fuck off, that I wasn't interested in whatever it was I needed to help him with. The nasty sounds continued on the other line, with some moaning, and then silence. I've always wondered if the two incidents were connected. I reported the call to my college, and local police were completely at a loss. All they could offer was a student escort to walk me to my classes in case I really was being watched, as the guy on the phone seemed to imply. When cops tried to trace the calls and track the towers they had pinged off of, the locations were many and varied, none near me. I still feel like the person who entered my home and apparently ate food in my bed might be behind those calls. So, me and one of my friends, I'll call him Thor, 'cause why not, went to the skate rink tonight and were having a pretty good time. We chatted with friends, skated around the track, and were enjoying ourselves. But after a while, we started to get really bored. We remembered there was this storm drain under the lot we were on, so, being the dumb teenagers we are, we decided to check it out. We tried to get our friends to come along, but they all chickened out. So, it was just us two. For context, the drain was only about a 3-minute walk away. When we got there, we walked into the storm drain. It was small, only about 6 feet wide and 3.5 feet tall. We crouch-walked into the tunnel, prepared for something to happen, because, well, you never know. Thor and I always carry knives or tools, and that night I had a tactical pen with me. We got about 30 feet into the tunnel when we stopped. It was filled with trash, and we both thought we heard something. That's when we saw it, footsteps, and then a person peeking from behind the corner where the tunnel turned. The second we saw them, we bolted out of there as fast as we could. We went back to the rink to recover, but then, for some reason, we decided to go back again. Yeah, we're dumb teenagers. This time, we grabbed a 5-foot metal pipe along with my pen. We walked in deeper, making it to the turn where we heard footsteps again, this time getting louder and faster. Thor threw a glow stick into the darkness, and the footsteps started running toward us. We saw a dark figure charging at us, and I swear I've never run so fast in my life. We dropped the pipe and bailed. About an hour later, we decided to go back outside, not into the tunnel this time, to see if the glow sticks were still there. We had dropped a few to mark our way, along with the pipe at the entrance when we ran. But you'll never guess what we found. Nothing. No glow sticks, no pipe. Whoever was in there had taken them, and they were still in there. We could tell because we saw fresh footprints leading to where we had dropped the pipe and then back into the darkness. Let me just say, this might not be our last adventure, but I'm done with that tunnel for good. Thanks for venturing into the shadows with us on Nightmare Narratives. If this story sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the so you never miss another terrifying tale. Have a scary story of your own? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Who knows? Your nightmare might be our next feature. Sleep tight if you dare.